guest today is Dr. Stephen Gilligan. Steve is a practicing psychologist in Encinitas, California, and one of the most prominent proponents of Ericksonian hypnotherapy. He was part of the original NLP student group at the University of California. Milton Erickson and Gregory Bateson were his mentors. After receiving his doctorate in psychology from Stanford University, he became one of the first teachers and therapists to offer Ericksonian hypnotherapy. In 2004, he received the prestigious and rarely awarded Lifetime Achievement Award from the Milton Erickson Foundation for his research contributions. He's the developer of the Generative Self model, which he has consistently expanded for 35 years and taught in numerous seminars around the world. Together with Robert Dills, he founded the International Association of Generative Change, a global training institute for individuals and teams. We are very happy to have him with us today and welcome Dr. Stephen Gilligan. All right. So, Stephen, thanks so much for making the time to talk to us today on our video podcast about resilience. And I know it's early in the morning, your end, so it's already getting dark over here, but that's the advantage of modern technology. So
that's the advantage.
Yeah, that's perfect. So basically, what I would like to start with is resilience became such a buzzword in the last couple of years. And it probably means a lot of different things to different people. So maybe we could start with what you personally associate with the term resilience and how you would define it for yourself.
Yeah, I think, one of the reasons it's become such a buzzword, as you say, is because we live in increasingly unstable or destabilizing times.
Mm-hmm.
And, it used to be we had much more of a monoculture or a fairly stable story or narrative, relatively speaking. And, the last 5 years in particular, all of our traditional organizations are breaking apart.
Mm-hmm.
All of our sort of general maps that we have about what is the world and who are we in it are breaking apart, which, we know from psychotherapy, that's what usually happens as the means by which people develop something new and generate a new identity.
Mm-hmm.
In any case, once they break apart, you sort of take a fall. You fall and you don't have stability. Resilience, I think the traditional meaning means that you're able to bounce back. So you're able to suffer some disruption, some setback, some failure, some even trauma, but you're able to recover and get back into your better states. That's resilience.
All right. So how important is resilience for your work? What kind of connections exist to the work you're doing with your patients, with your clients?
Yeah. I think it's really at the top of the list in terms of importance for this reason. We have, I think, this childhood fantasy. If I just do the right thing, if I get the right therapist, if I get the right relationship, if I have the right job, then I'll live happily ever after. And so, when people come in to do work with us, they're usually hoping for this magical cure.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's the way organically how things work. I say to clients, partly from my Irish shadow side, but I think just realistically, these core wounds or these core negative places that you're struggling with, they're the sort of the weak links in your chain, if you would use that as a metaphor. They will always be there. And when you get into a lot of stress, and it's just a matter of time before you get into a lot of stress, that's kind of the way that you fall apart. That's what you lose. So we're not looking for the one technique or the one thing that changes everything forever.
Mm-hmm.
We're really looking for this model that I get my center, I step into the world, I go into things that are challenging and thereby rewarding for me. But part of that process is I fall down.
Mm-hmm.
And I have, as you know, we were just together in Italy. I have a 15-month-old granddaughter, and to watch a child of that age learning how to walk and then practicing that, they fall a lot.
Mm-hmm.
People like Joseph Chilton Pierce, who was this writer in the 60s and 70s in the States, used to call that an integral part of the process of learning how to walk. You roll over, you stand,
Mm-hmm.
you balance, you imbalance, you fall. And it's really interesting to see young ones when they fall. I was just at the park yesterday morning with my granddaughter, and she was running and she fell. And your sort of concern is, did they get hurt? Are they cut? Because then you need to attend to that. But she fell. She paused for a moment. She laughed. She got back up. She started running again. So that's the resilience that we're looking to have as an integral part of our therapeutic models. Pierce would say that the real problems begin with what he called the error correction error, which means we fall and we have a relationship to the fall that this is bad. I can't let anybody see this. It means I'm a failure. And now you give primary focus to don't fall, don't fail, don't struggle. And you become very artificial and phony. And of course, that makes you more brittle and more prone to falling. So we're trying to make friends with all of the experiences that lead you to fall apart, to fall, to fail, and to see them as one of a number of integral parts of any creative life.
Mm-hmm. So, in this sense, what are, or how would you sum up the skills and probably the attitudes you were already touching on that are important or necessary to build resilience?
Yeah, well, I would describe it in terms of we have three different types of mind, if you will. We have our somatic, our first mind is our body mind, our somatic mind, our nonverbal nature mind. That's where we start as children. But that always is the base for everything else that we do. So I trained in martial arts for 26 years. I've had a meditation practice since I was 14 years old. That's a long time ago. And really what you're doing there is learning how to connect with a somatic center, which is not something up in your head. It's not the way things should be. It's not the way things are, but it's a dropping underneath your verbal mind into this sense of a stable, present sort of boom, boom, if you will. That's the most important thing. So whatever comes, it's okay. You're not grasping onto it. You're not shocked by it. You're just learning how to stay centered. And any creative performer, I think, does this. To do that, you have to be relaxed. Any creative performer will tell you that for them to prepare for their creative performance, whether it's an athlete or a musician or somebody publicly speaking, they have to relax, go to their center, get down, and use that as their first connection. So that's the somatic. Second is what we might call the field, which is all of the relational communities to which you belong. There's been great research in the past 20 years, so-called meta-analyses of people who get severely trauma, who experience a severe trauma, which by a narrow measure would include physiological shock. And in the United States, there's about 1 out of 2 people that at some point will experience this really severe experience. We have an opportunity to look at then of people who experience these deep, deep traumas, who develops PTSD, which would be really the way of thinking about who doesn't find their resilience, who goes into that horrible experience and gets locked into it and can't get out of it. That's PTSD. And only I was surprised, since I worked with trauma survivors for about 30 years, only about 1 in 4 people who experience a very severe trauma can't recover from it within 6 months. 6 months is usually the period that's used technically. So you look at what are the people that recover, what are the people that have resilience. The one word that you could use to describe the difference is connection. So if the person had in their childhood at least one adult who bonded with them, which is to say, really loved them and let them know they were a great person, they were special, and et cetera, that people who had these bonding experiences had more resilience. A second thing you can look at is in the person's present life, the number of positive connections that they have, for example, friends or family. So if I get traumatized and I isolate, I go to my room and I don't come out, and I just am watching TV or binging or getting drunk, I don't find my resilience. But if I have community that doesn't let me isolate, come on, we've got, your nephew's birthday or soccer football game, and then you go to the game and your nephew scores a goal and everybody's so happy. It's hard to stay depressed. It's hard to stay in your negative state when you're in a place where everybody else is happy. So that is the second factor in terms of your relational field. And then third, how you imagine your future after the fall or the error or the failure. If you have a sense, for example, if you tell a story, this experience destroyed my life, I'll never be the same, that pretty much tips the playing field to you staying stuck in that as a defining experience for the rest of your life. So those are all ways to talk about connection. And then thirdly, when we say the third mind, the somatic mind, the social field mind, and then thirdly, your cognitive mind, verbally, the intentions that you hold, the commitments that you have, the values that you have, these all really significantly influence your resilience. I like sports, and I love, watching interviews with athletes after a big game, and the really great ones, whether they win or lose, they say, okay, well, that happened, that's interesting, but our real focus is on winning the championship. So whether we win, whether we lose, if we lose, we feel badly, but we'll watch the tape the next day and we'll get better from it. If we win, yeah, we can enjoy the win, but we haven't really achieved anything yet. Really our goal is to go all the way to that finish line of where we're going. So that's a way of using your cognitive mind to keep your eyes on the prize, as sometimes we say here. Keep your eyes on the prize. So those three connections that you have really make a big difference in your resilience.
Mm-hmm. So you touched on bonding. You also talked a
Yeah.
little bit about sports and social connections. And I was wondering, what differences do you see in developing resilience with regards to individuals versus groups and organizations? So how can groups and organizations develop resilience beyond, let's say, the
Yeah.
individuals that are part of that groups?
Well, it depends on how you define a positive group. I
Mhm.
think traditionally we think of the group as sort of one mass, like you give up your ego and you're part of something bigger than yourself. That doesn't promote resilience. It's more promotes cults and groupthink. And then when the inevitable stressors happen,
Mhm.
you just look to the leader, for the answer, and everybody gets more and more rigid. So what I would define as a generative or a creative group always has two levels. One is there's this shared commitment, the we-ness, and there's ways to bond about that. There's ways to non-verbally, we go out together, we have meetings together, we have projects together, we affirm our connection of we-ness on a regular basis. But secondly, a generative group that will have resilience is one in which the individual differences are equally valued.
Mhm.
We know, and again, if we look at a sports team or a musical group, we see that the really great ones have a beautiful balance between many, many different talents. If everybody's playing the same way, you won't get very far. But this person has this strength, this person has this strength. So a resilient group has to have equal attunement and attention and respect for the value of each individual and then the value of the group at the same time. So that we is what allows generativity.
Mhm. So what can organizations or groups do to develop that? You call it generative. I would probably call it systemic resilience.
Okay. Yeah.
How does this
Yeah.
process, or how is this process different from individuals?
I think there are probably more similarities than differences.
Okay.
And, what we're looking at is your representational systems. And in a rigid, non-resilient system, individually or collectively, there's a fixed map of this is what success looks like. This is what the world looks like. And the way that we get these fixed maps is we have an image of something, and then we stop breathing and squeeze our muscles. That's, for many of us, we call that effort or trying. We have this sort of sense. The reason that's not very helpful is, first of all, that map is a very pale, poor representation of the actual territory. It's a kind of a unidimensional snapshot of the way things are. Furthermore, things change. Whatever you're doing, if you succeed, you have changed the playing field. So what works at one point, your optimal strategy at one point, is not going to be the optimal strategy at the next point in the development of that system. We see that especially now with groups and organizations because of how rapidly things are changing. So if we have a fixed map, this is what the world is about, this is the issue, this is what we have to do, you will fail because your understanding, your representation of the system is too rigid, and you're not able to adapt to feedback, the changing conditions, the things that should be more fluid. So that means you have a map that, some places they call a deep structure or a general plan that you're really prepared for. In sports, we have the saying, the game plan works until the game begins. And I know, for any client, you talk with the client, whatever, you email them or text them or whatever, and you develop this idea about who this person is. And then you actually meet them. I know for me, the person is so different from what my fantasy was. And so you realize that whatever I think about whatever I'm doing, it's wrong. It's a very flimsy representation. I have to do it. But more importantly, I have to have a way of feeling feedback. No, not this way. No, not that, not that.
Mm-hmm.
And then have a way of opening my creative space in my internal consciousness or in my community relationship, how we're doing as a group, so that we can be adjusting. Sometimes those adjustments are just shifting a little bit here, a little bit there. But periodically, we have to go through kind of a deeper level of adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
The fundamental way that we've been approaching this doesn't work anymore, if it ever worked. So we have to go through a sort of a death and a rebirth process. And failure or lack of success is feedback that whatever your maps are, they don't fit the needs of the situation. So you have to have a way of resilience to let go of everything, to let go of trying, to let go of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Otto Scharmer's work, on the presencing and the theory of you, I think is very relevant here. You have to be able to empty out, to go down the one side of the you until you're just holding a question without any strict bias. And from holding that question, things begin to come to you individually, collectively, and it allows you to slowly assemble these suggestions, these prototypes that can be tested. But you realize that they're always an adjustment, always an adjustment. So that sense of flow
Mm-hmm.
with everything that you're doing is crucial to resilience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like this very much. On the one hand, the appreciation for diversity and what everyone brings to the table, basically. And on the other hand, probably having a plan, but leaving it behind and kind of go with the flow in a flexible way. So everyone adapts to the unknown. And I think that's pretty true.
So it's a combination, I think, of going with what you know, because your training and your knowledge is really, really important. You can't do it just by saying, I don't know, just let it happen. As you know, I've been working in the field of hypnosis for almost 50 years, and you get that sort of idea. People think, oh, if I just let my unconscious take care of everything, things will work out. It won't. It's really this disciplined balance between these two minds. One is knowing and focusing and having these clear ideas and a set of methods that you're trained in. And the other is going into this sort of ocean of not knowing. And creativity is really at the meeting place between those two modes.
Yeah. So I wanted to finally ask you if there's any aspect that we didn't touch on yet that is particularly close to your heart, or that you believe is relevant or interesting for our audience. So was that already it, or is there anything else you want to basically share to wrap up?
Well, Felix, you spent 5 days with me in Italy, and you know my Irish ancestors always have something to add. I've been doing this work formally. You know, I started with Milton Erickson when I was 19 years old, and that's just about 50 years ago. And there's this sort of key idea, the common idea to Erickson's work, that I think has made such a difference to people, which is how to welcome and accept whatever is in each moment as always the first step to any sort of creative change. You know, so this idea, if something is there and we're trying to shut it out, or we're thinking of it as something to control or get rid of, we have shut down our creative flow tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to have this skill that we're always working with, that unfortunately is not really taught that much in the mainstream, of how to have this resilience that is based on being present with each moment as it appears and arises in your experience, and having this sense of confidence. I don't know what this means, but I do know that if I find a way to accept it and connect it to all of the other resources I have inside of me, that will help me move forward in a creative way in my life. So conversely, where people are stuck, you know, which is usually when we as coaches or therapists or OD people come into a system's life, when they're stuck, we say there's something in their experience that they're not willing or able to accept. And so they're freezing and they're thinking, I can't let this in, I have to change it. And that is what is locking them into a stuck state.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean is the question. You know, sometimes you hear clients say, you don't expect me to just do nothing. And I say, yes, that's it. You know, of course, you see my Chinese characters back there. Those are the two for compassion. But I really like the characters for Wu, for sort of active non-doing, which is called Wu Wei, which is a centered, open presencing that lets you be aware. Mindfulness is really a close term for it. That you be aware of everything that's there without judging it, trying to change it, but staying connected to your center and your positive intention, so that you're curious about a way of engaging with it that can be helpful to all the players involved. So that's what I would add, you know, as the gift that keeps on giving, so to speak.
Perfect. That's a great reminder, because there's actually a guy, I forgot his forename, but Fischer. He's a German who lived in Switzerland, and he published, I think, 3-4 books on Wu Wei that are really, really good. And I think that they have never been translated and made it into the world. So they stick in the German language. But when I had my burnout in 2015, That's
Right.
the book that my wife gave me when I went into the clinic,
Awesome.
and it kind of changed my life. And I think it's
Yeah.
I think I gifted it to at least 10 people since then. And
That's great. That's great.
it's
Yeah.
really, I think it's a really interesting Taoistic philosophy that is not that easy to understand when you come from this kind of world we all probably grew
You're right.
into.
It,
But it's really a game changer, and it's probably something that
I
should
think it's a
be
game
much more
changer.
public.
Yeah. So, it's this idea, what does creative action look like? Or what does successful performance look like? And we're generally taught in the West, you try really hard and you focus and you just are one-sided in your focus, particularly in America, only the positive, success, success, success. And you get burnout, or you get, very narrow-minded in your understanding of life. So, yeah, we do, I think, this mature skill of the basis for all creativity is this mindful centering
Yeah.
that allows you to empty out, kind of like, again, the theory of you, to empty out, to be connected to something underneath your thought forms, to have an intention, then to begin an exploration of how to engage with whatever is there, to be able to build some creativity that you don't know really how it's going to look. I don't know if you know who David Byrne, the guy who Talking Heads. He's a very creative guy. I was just watching an interview with him, and he was saying that he sort of is guided by just where his excitement goes. And, he was talking about the end of Talking Heads, and he got into this world music and this Latin music. He said, I wasn't thinking it here. I was just noticing what touched me that got me excited. And that Joseph Campbell in his hero's journey, that's how he said, what your journey is, your creative journey is, that when you connect with something, the world gets brighter and deeper. And you don't know what it means. All you know is it increases your aliveness. And that's the somatic part. And if you're guided by that, and if you realize, if I don't have that, and I don't have the resonance, and I don't have the curiosity, I won't be able to do anything interesting that will make me happy, that will allow me to be successful, and so forth. So chill out, center, accept whatever is there, then bring your intention and all of your learned processes into play, knowing that as long as you stay connected with the deeper organic music of the present moment, all shall be well.
Wow. I think you couldn't sum it up more
Yeah.
perfectly. So thank you so much for having you today. I know it's a Sunday morning in San Diego or north of it. And yeah, thanks so much for your time. Have a great remaining Sunday, and hopefully see you next year again.
Okay, Felix. Thanks a lot for a good conversation. Good luck to everybody listening.